So this is episode number 3 of Lightroom tutorials, where I'm just going to go bit by bit through Lightroom and kind of explain some of the different tools. So last week we learned about the exposure tab, using black and white points, stuff like that. And I'm still staying within that tab, but in this one I'm going to be talking about color. So that is white balance, tint, and also vibrance and saturation, which are all incredibly important. So color, of course, is incredibly important with image editing because a lot of your photos are going to be in color. So I'm going to open up Adobe Camera Raw here to go over a bunch of the kind of basic coloring tools in Adobe Camera Raw or Adobe Lightroom, whatever you're using. It'll all work. But this is just a simple way to kind of show you how these different tools are going to work for you. So let's check it out on Adobe Camera Raw in Photoshop. So here we have just a basic rainbow, like I said we were going to have, and this is just a really good way to kind of illustrate how a few of these different tools work. Now, I think what I'm going to start off with is down here in Vibrance and Saturation, and then we'll move up to here, up to White Balance. So a lot of people should be familiar with vibrance and saturation, but I think a lot of people don't really understand what the differences are between the two, and I think this will be kind of a good demonstration of how they work differently. So just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what's going on here, I'm just going to simply slide vibrance to the right, and you see it's getting a little bit more saturated, and I'm bringing it down to the left, and you see it's a little bit desaturated. And then I'm just going to reset that by double clicking, and then I'm going to go over to saturation, bring it all the way up, and then bring it all the way down, and you see it obviously desaturates it. But what you may not have known is that these two serve very, very different purposes. And I'm going to start with saturation just to kind of, I think this is a good base understanding of how saturation works. So if I take saturation and I take it and scoot it all the way up, what it's doing is it's looking at the entire image and just indiscriminately raising the saturation levels or making each color, more colorful. It's adding more color of each pixel. So, you see right here, it's boosted all the way up to the bottom, and down here, it's still, fairly unsaturated. And, as you see, like, I'll just kind of move it back and forth. It's still staying, fairly uncolorful down here, and only affecting the bright colors up at the top. But if I move it all the way to the left, it takes all of the color out of the image 100% completely. There's not any color here, and then I can bring it back. So vibrance works differently than saturation. I'm going to show you, I'm just going to slide it just so you can kind of see. It works a little bit different. And I'm going to point out 2 key things that vibrance does differently than saturation. And honestly, I think that vibrance is probably the better tool between the two. So notice on I pointed on saturation down here. It doesn't really affect the bottom very much. You can see it's really only affecting the colors up in this area at the top. But what vibrance does is it does 2 things. It takes the more muted colors and tries to bring them up to be more saturated, on a more saturated level as some of the other colors in the image. So you'll see that when I move the vibrance slider down here in this area, the less noticeable colors become more noticeable. So as I slide it up, you'll see these colors, which weren't very saturated. I'll zoom in just so you can kind of get an idea. So here we go. So this is how it was before. That's at 0 vibrance, and then it's showing a lot more color in this, basically completely desaturated area, versus saturation, where it also does add a little bit, but it's not doing it to the same extent. Vibrance is really works on keying in on just the unsaturated areas and really working on those first, and then working on the more heavily saturated areas up here. Now this is the key feature of Vibrance. This is its second feature. Vibrance only works in a certain spectrum of the rainbow. So what you'll notice is over here is where Vibrance has its biggest effect, in the greens through kind of the pure reds and I guess magentas. But the key part that it leaves out is in the yellows and the oranges. So you'll see as I move this up, it's really not having any effect like it's having over here. So I can slide this around all I want, and it's just not having any effect. Versus here, you can see this is with saturation. Especially look right here on this, red to yellow gradient. It's really having an effect with saturation versus Vibrance, where nothing is happening. Now this serves a very important role, and the reason being is this is right where human skin tone would be. So a lot of portrait photographers will use this to add saturation to the image without making your subject look like a glowing neon sign, because that's just not what you want. So Vibrance will bring up, like let's say you're near some trees, it'll bring up the saturation of the trees around you, maybe the sky or some other objects nearby, but it won't really give you that goofy skin tone where saturation really does that. And then another kind of interesting quirk about Vibrance is when you bring it all the way down, it doesn't completely suck all of the color from the image. It still leaves some of the color there. I personally have not found too much use for this, but I'm sure somebody out there does have a good use for dragging the Vibrance all the way down. And of course, saturation, like I said, brings all the color out of the image. Point number 2 about color is up here in temperature and tint. Now, this is often referred to as either temperature, white balance, color balance, however you want to refer to it. And this is, personally for me, the number one thing that I want to be editing on my image, because it kind of gives you the overall feel. Like let's say you're in the middle of a field and you just have the white balance set to auto, it's just capturing whatever your camera's seeing. You can give that photo 2 completely different feels. So if you bring the temperature down to more blue, then it's going to give it a nice cool image. It's going to make it look like maybe it was cold there, versus if you were to drag it up more warm, it's going to make it look like it's maybe a hot day or the end of the day. So this isn't a very good image to kind of explain this, but you can kind of see down here and throughout the rest of the image, bringing the color balance up makes it look more warm, more orange, and then bringing it down makes it look more cool. But I'm going to open up an image to kind of show all of these different factors working together to create a good image. Okay, so here we have an image of downtown San Diego. Now, it may kind of look maybe like it's something that's not very noteworthy, whatever you want to say, but you can really crank a lot out of an image like this using Vibrance, white balance, all these different tools. Now, one thing I do want to mention, and it just wouldn't have worked on the other one, is you can actually set the white balance of an image, like a custom white balance, by using this tool right up here, and it's called the white balance tool. Now, if you're doing a more exact image, the way that this would work is by simply grabbing this tool and then finding a white portion in the image, and see, like, I know that this portion right here is pure white, and all I have to do is just click on it, and it will make sure that the image right there is perfectly white. So you see here, it took this sample right here, and because the sail kind of had a warm glow on it because it was sunset time, it took the entire image and kind of corrected it to make this pure white. But that's not really what I want right now, because I think the image looks even worse than how it looked at the beginning. So I'm going to set this back to as shot, and this right here is just kind of a basic way to set the white balance for different lighting situations. So like, let's say you're outside in the middle of the day, you could set it to daylight, and it would set the white balance proper for a daylight shot. Or you could set it to tungsten, so if you're under a really orange light, it'll turn it very blue to kind of try to counteract that really warm color light. So I'm gonna go back to add shot. Now what I really want to do is I want to get a good balance between the the bright orange clouds right here and kind of the blue sky. I want to get a balance of both of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crank the saturation way higher than I normally would. And this is not going to be where the image is finalized. This is just going to kind of give me a good idea of what the balance of the color in the image looks like. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the temperature down a little bit to get a nice balance here. So I think that this looks like it's got a good balance between the orange and the blue, and then I can bring it back down. And then I might want to drag the magentas up a little bit. So you can kind of see, like, if I drag it all the way up, it's just pure purple. If I drag it all the way down, it's pure green. Looks absolutely disgusting. So I just want to slightly move this a little bit to the right to get a little bit more of the pinks in there, a little bit more of the purples. And then I'm going to then change the vibrance. Now, I can move this around quite a bit. Of course, nothing is damaging here, so I can set it really high, I can set it really low, and then, make the changes a little bit later on. And I think as far as the color balance goes in this image, I want to maybe bring it a little bit more orange. And that's starting to look real nice. It's got a little bit of the purple tones in the clouds up here. And then from there, I can go into the image and make all the changes I need to make. So I can, maybe brighten the image up, maybe add a little bit of clarity, and, just change the white points and the black points and all that stuff that we learned in the previous episodes. Okay, so here we have the before, and you see it kind of looks like a little bit drab, a little bit dreary, and then I'm just going to show you how it looked after. Now this might be, overkill for some of you, I don't know. I personally like it, but I think this just goes to show that only using that first tab on Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom is incredibly powerful. You can take your image from something that's, fairly, undesirable to something that's pretty nice looking, and, there's tons more that you can go through on Photoshop that I'm going to be going over in later episodes that will strengthen your images even further than this. Because, this is a huge difference, and that only took maybe 30 seconds. If I wasn't talking, it could have been even less time than that. So I think that's a very good example of how powerful some of these tools can be in Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom. So we finally finished with the very first tab in Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom. And as you can see, it's incredibly powerful. I think everybody uses this in their workflow all the time. But I think that one of the key parts was kind of explaining the differences between vibrance and saturation to show how you can kind of use both these tools to either bring up the undersaturated colors in your image and bring them to be more saturated, or use vibrance in a portrait situation where you don't want the skin tones of your subject to be kind of turned into a goofy color. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I appreciate you guys watching through the whole video. And like I said, this is going to be a kind of a continuous series where I'm going to be going through Lightroom, Photoshop, explaining every single tool in its arsenal. So once again, thank you guys for watching the entire video. If you can, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you liked about this, what you didn't like about it, or if you have suggestions for future videos. I would like to hear your guys' thoughts. So I will see you guys on the next video, where we will be talking about some of the more complicated tools in Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop.